Okay, good evening, everyone. Professors, Ms. Lina, it's an honor to see you again. My fellow IR members and all of the IR students that are attending on a Thursday night. I hope you're all doing well. Of course, my name is Hajar Khamis, and I'll be your moderator for today's very special seminar. As a member of the IR Society, I would like to welcome you all here today.
Hajar, we don't hear you. I don't know whether we lost you or what.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, I do.
So today's seminar, by the title Building Bridges for Every Child, will be hosted by Ms. Lina. Thank you for being here today. It's an honor to have you again. If anyone has any questions, please wait for the Q&A session at the end. Ms. Lina, the mic is all yours. Let's start.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Hajar. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Doctor. And thank you all the students who took time on a Thursday night to be here with us. I really, really appreciate it. I'll just share my screen with you guys right away so we can dive into it. And if you could please confirm that you are able to see.
We do see it.
We can see it.
Okay, excellent. So I would like to start by looking at the landscape of the UN system in all of its nitty-gritty details. No, I'm kidding, I'm not going to do that. I want you guys to like me. So we're not doing that. But I would like to talk a little bit about the UN system and how UNICEF fits into the bigger United Nations system. So UNICEF is part of the United Nations system, the main bodies of which you can see them there: General Assembly, Security Council, Economic and Social Council. You might be more familiar with some than others. And we also have the UN Secretariat. All of these were established under the UN Charter when the organization was founded in 1945. The United Nations is part of the UN system, which includes the UN itself, funds like UNICEF, for example, programs such as the UN Development Program, and specialized agencies. I think the one you would probably most recognize, WHO. Each of these have their own areas of work, leadership, budget, etc. So completely independent, but then at the same time reporting to the United Nations. The programs and funds are financed through voluntary contributions, which means that we rely on the generosity of governments and people to fund our work entirely. You can see there UNICEF, where we sit within that bigger United Nations structure. So how did UNICEF begin? How did we come about as an organization? We were established in 1946 by the United Nations General Assembly, initially to provide immediate relief to children affected by World War II. Then in 1953, it became a permanent part of the United Nations. All the member states came together and they decided that this was an organization that needed to stay because children were a priority for all of the countries. A couple of months ago actually, UNICEF celebrated its 75th year of working for child rights and for the well-being of every child, regardless of where or who they are. UNICEF's mission is guided by the Convention on the Rights of the Child. You can see there those nice colorful icons. Those represent the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So we are guided by both the CRC, we call it CRC, we love our acronyms in the UN, so you have to forgive me if I do start mentioning acronyms. You have to just put them in the chat box and then we'll circle back and I'll unpack those for you later. We have also a fundamental belief that the survival, protection, and development of children are non-negotiables. The Convention on the Rights of the Child is a beautiful little document, which, by the way, I carried around in my purse for, I don't know, 10 years maybe, until it fell apart completely and I had to throw it away. So it's this beautiful document that solidifies the promise of countries to protect their child rights. It explains who children are, all of their rights, from health to education, etc., and also explains the connectivity between the rights and how all of them are equally important. You cannot distinguish between the rights. UNICEF works in 190 countries and territories, so we are almost in every country around the world to save the lives of children, to ensure their rights are fulfilled, and to give them the opportunities they need to live up to their full potential. Of course, UNICEF's goals relate also to the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm sure you are familiar with them, not only through your studies, but also through the UAE government's various projects and programs that support the achievement of the SDGs, both here at home in the UAE, but also abroad. So let's talk a little bit about UNICEF-specific goal areas. What do we actually focus on as an organization? UNICEF's goal areas contribute to the achievement of the 2030 SDGs, of course, which for UNICEF means a world where no one is left behind and the rights of every child are realized. We do this by working with a wide range of stakeholders to achieve child-related SDGs in 5 specific goal areas or outcomes, to make sure that in all contexts, including humanitarian crises, in fact, particularly in humanitarian crises, every child and adolescent survives and thrives with access to nutritious diets, quality health services, and nurturing practices, learns and acquires skills for the future, is protected from violence, exploitation, neglect, and abuse, as well as harmful practices, has access to safe and equitable water, sanitation, and hygiene services and supplies, and lives in a safe and sustainable climate and environment. This one, as you can imagine, is something that has become much more relevant in the last few years. And finally, has access to inclusive social protection and lives free from poverty. So our work is also guided by the cross-cutting programs of climate action, disability, peace building, resilience, and gender. So these cross-cutting areas feature under all of the goal areas that we work in. Currently, and this is something I think probably that most of you will know more about in terms of UNICEF's areas of work, UNICEF is the biggest vaccine buyer in the world. And we are leading the largest vaccine supply operation in history on behalf of COVAX. UNICEF procures more than 2 billion doses of vaccines every year for routine immunization and outbreak response. Working with Gavi, one of our most important partners, we helped reach more than 760 million children with life-saving vaccines over the last 20 years, preventing more than 13 million deaths. Since the COVID-19 vaccine became available, more than 1 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccine has been delivered through COVAX, and we aim to deliver 4 billion doses more before the end of the year. So you can imagine the size of this undertaking. These are some of the partnerships that we've recently entered into. We received a very generous contribution from the government of the UAE, and it is being implemented through the HOPE Consortium. This was a contribution for $50 million US dollars to support UNICEF with the delivery of vaccines and ancillary supplies, which is PPEs, syringes, etc., and also includes a donation of 1 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine. So if you allow me, I'll probably keep talking about UNICEF for a very long time. So I'll leave you for a little bit with one of our Goodwill ambassadors, Liam Neeson, to tell you a little bit about who we are as an organization and what we do.
There's no voice. Is there any voice?
Yes, unfortunately, we cannot hear anything.
Oh, that's a shame. Can you hear me though?
Yeah, we can.
Interesting. I'm not sure why there's no audio. Any tech-savvy students online?
If you can just share the sound.
Share sound. Da, da, da. Aha. Okay. Please let me know if it's working now.
Unreasonable. It's how you have to be if you want to change things. Relentless. Tenacious. The world's children need people like that. People who see impossible as incentive to try harder. Who find one good reason to keep going in the face of 1,000 reasons to stop. So, shout out to the hardcore, because big problems need big solutions from big game players. You know the type, the determined, the persistent, the unreasonable. UNICEF, in more than 190 countries and territories, we never give up until the rights of every child are protected. Are you with us? UNICEF, for every child.
All right, to continue. All right, partnerships for change. UNICEF's new strategic plan for 2020-2025 has identified some change strategies that will accelerate the achievement of UNICEF's planned results. These include advocacy and communication, innovation and partnership. And this is where I come in. There are, let me show you some of my colleagues that I work with here in the Gulf Area Office. So these are some of the incredible people that Liam Neeson was just talking about in the video. Working with the UNICEF was actually my childhood dream since I was about 11 years old. I have been fortunate to be part of the UNICEF family for 19 years now. I've worked in Ethiopia, Angola, Iraq, Jordan, Syria, and Pakistan programs. And for the last 4 years, I have been based here in the UAE, working from Dubai as the Public Partnerships Manager for the Gulf Area Office. My current job as a Public Partnerships Manager is to form and strengthen partnerships with a wide range of stakeholders and to establish strategic alliances for children, not only to raise awareness about child rights and UNICEF's humanitarian and development priorities, but also to raise funds. Because without funding and without the generosity of our partners, it would be impossible for us to implement our programs. So let me talk a little bit about what UNICEF does in the UAE. As you can imagine, we are very blessed here. So the types of issues that UNICEF deals with are quite different from some of our more traditional programs in other parts of the world. So the UNICEF Gulf Area Office has a presence in Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai, and we serve programs in Bahrain, Kuwait, KSA, and the UAE. In the UAE, our key focus areas revolve around early childhood development. And this is something quite important actually for Sharjah, because I don't know if everyone knows, and I hope you do, that Sharjah is a child-friendly city, officially certified by UNICEF as a child-friendly city. This is something we are extremely proud of. And we also work in child protection, data and evidence, specifically, of course, about children and youth, and partnerships. Working with our partners like, for example, the Supreme Council for Motherhood and Childhood, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, and others, we have been working on programs around all of these areas. But we've also focused on things that have become much more relevant in the last few years, for example, mental health, online safety, In fact, you might have seen our recent campaign with the Supreme Council for Motherhood and Childhood and DO around mental health and internet safety. I'd be happy to share the link for that if you haven't. We also do a lot of work around partnerships, engaging with a wide range of public and private partners. You will see there are some of those partners that we work with quite regularly who are big supporters of UNICEF. And we work together on global, regional, and local events as well, hosted by the government of the UAE. For example, Expo has been a very big area of engagement for us with the partners here in the UAE. The Rewired Summit, the biggest education summit globally that was hosted here at Expo. The World Government Summit, which happens every year, as well as other events. And here, I would like to invite you all, hopefully, through this video, to consider at some point joining UNICEF. And we'll talk a little bit more after this about some of the ways that you would be able to do that. Just confirming that I'm still sharing sound.
What I love most about working for UNICEF is the fact that we can intervene and do work all around the world. In the most remote area, we can make a difference for children.
I know my work contributes to something that serves a great purpose towards helping those who are most in need. And that's why every day at the office is something inspiring.
I wanted to work for UNICEF because it is an organization where you can make a difference in the life of children.
What I love every day when I come to work is the people I work with. I work with people from different countries, the diversity, and I learn so much about different cultures. That's what I love.
At UNICEF, you will work with dedicated and passionate colleagues to make a difference in the life of every child, delivering on the ground in 190 countries and territories, reaching the hardest to reach, the furthest from help. Our mandate inspires us to achieve results, to keep standards high, and to grow both professionally as well as personally.
What I love most about working for UNICEF is its people, the diverse culture and the energy level, and a chance to contribute to changing the lives of children in my very own small way.
Join us to make a difference for every child.
That particular video is very near and dear to my heart because it really sums up why I decided at a very young age to join UNICEF. Of course, at that time when I was around 11, I thought working for UNICEF meant just wearing the t-shirt and then playing with children all day, which of course, who wouldn't want to do that? But what I didn't realize is that it's so much more than that. You know, you go to bed every night really feeling fulfilled and grateful and proud of yourself for having contributed, even in the smallest way, to the well-being of children. So that said, here are some of the ways that one could join UNICEF. And we are always looking for eager young minds like you to be part of our organization. So, of course, the most traditional and the most kind of long-term way of working with UNICEF is actually getting a long-term job with UNICEF. And I really do hope that all of you will consider doing that at some point, hopefully. It's a remarkable experience. It doesn't matter how long I talk to you guys about it, unless you try it for yourself. You will not fully appreciate how much of a reward it is to do something like this every day. So I've put there a couple of links, which I will share with all of you afterwards, for the vacancies where you can see in all the job listings for UNICEF globally, not just in the Gulf region. We also have several other programs. I'm just trying to find a way that I can also be seen. Can you see me now? Okay.
Yes.
We have something called the UN Volunteer Program. This is a very interesting way to join UNICEF, plus other UN agencies. It's not only exclusive to UNICEF. For this, you need things like an undergraduate degree, several years of experience, and you apply through the UN Volunteer Program. It's not application directly to the agencies, but there's a program that manages the volunteering opportunities for all of the UN. And I've included the link there as well. Junior Professional Officer Program is another very interesting program. And I'm actually very pleased to inform you, in case you don't already know, that the UAE joined this program a couple of years ago. And I was part of the orientation that we did for the first cohort of junior professional officers from the UAE. That one also is a beautiful program. Usually it targets youth that are under 32. We look for an advanced university degree, minimum 2 years of job experience, and there's a few other requirements that are detailed on the website. And then finally, we have internships, which is also a really good opportunity to get a sense of what the UN organizations, UNICEF and other UN organizations do. And then gives you an opportunity also to learn, but also to determine whether or not this is a path that you would like to take in the future. So you have to be enrolled already in undergrad, grad, or PhD studies. You have to have excellent academic performance, which I'm sure all of you do, and proficiency in English, etc. You know, all of the other usual suspects. So these are really the types of engagements that you can have with the UN in terms of either it's becoming your career or enriching your career as you look at other types of opportunities in other sectors. There's also other opportunities for engagement. For example, right now at Expo, we have a UN hub, a dedicated UN hub, where you could all go and visit. There's an exhibition with, what do you call it? It's like an SDG themed exhibition of paintings from all over the world. It's quite interesting and fun to see. And there's colleagues from the UN, different UN agencies there working at the hub, volunteering at the hub that you can speak with. I wish I could tell you there are some volunteering opportunities at the hub, but unfortunately you can imagine as soon as they opened the door for that, all the opportunities were taken, and they in fact have more volunteers than they need. I don't know if there's any chance that the Expo would be extended, but if that happens, there might be an opportunity there because it's really quite interesting to see. So if you do come to Expo, please do come to the UN hub and visit us there. I think you will really enjoy it. The other thing you could potentially do maybe through the university is to organize a trip to the International Humanitarian City. So the International Humanitarian City is the entity that houses all of the UN agencies, all of us, UNICEF, WFP, UNHCR, WHO, we're all based in the International Humanitarian City. So this is a space that is provided to all of the UN agencies that operate in the UAE free of charge. And they also provide a lot of support. It's not just the offices, but they also provide a lot of support to us in terms of storage and logistic support to, you know, for example, when we're sending vaccines or other supplies from Dubai, which is a big hub, as you can imagine, to other countries. So another option would be to do that. And there you'll get the chance also to meet all the UN agencies, not just UNICEF. You'll have a chance to interact with others as well. You can see the tents that UNICEF, UNHCR, other UN agencies provide in situations of humanitarian crises. You can see the trucks that we use, for example, when we go to the field. So it's quite a nice experience as well. And then, of course, the UAE will be hosting COP28, which I think is a remarkable opportunity for all of the young people in the UAE to engage, because this is something that is extremely important for all of us, but particularly for you guys who are much younger than, at least I'll speak for myself, much younger than me. And it is an opportunity. I think there will be a lot of opportunities to engage not only with the UAE-based entities, whether public or private, but also with the UN, because the amount of work it will take for all of us together to host COP28 and make it impactful and something to be remembered, and hopefully something that will really change the course of history. It takes all of our collective effort. So I think definitely there will be opportunities there as well. And there's still a little bit of time, because that will be November 2023, I believe. So I'll stop here, Hajar, and I don't know if you want to start maybe taking some questions.
Okay, so thank you so much. Allow me to thank you for presenting such informative yet touching topic. It really resonated with me because I'm taking refugees and displacement course, and as we analyze and study many issues and cases, it makes you feel safe to know that there are organizations out there that tend to lower the consequences of living in such rising issues that continue to rise. I'm sure that our students did enjoy this as much as I did. So without further ado, shall we move on to the questions? So if anyone wants to directly ask a question, please raise your hand. Then we will start with the chat questions. Okay. We've got Mahra Al-Shahi. Please ask your question.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Mahra.
So first, thank you for this amazing presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I joined the UNICEF. Like, I will try to apply for there, hopefully. Okay. So you mentioned COVID vaccines. So my question is, do children really need, and why they should be vaccinated? And as
Forgive me, Mahra, you're breaking up.
On children. So
Mahra, I think you meant to say that why our children need to be vaccinated. Your voice broke a bit, so if you try to fix your connection and ask your question again.
Is it working now?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So my question was, children really need to be vaccinated again? And if yes, then why they should be vaccinated?
I think she meant to say, do children need to be vaccinated? And if yes, why do they need to be vaccinated? Is it true, Mahra?
That's what I understood as well, yeah. Okay, so the beauty of UNICEF is that we are a very, very big organization that has different specializations within. My specialty is partnerships. So basically raising funds, establishing partnerships with a wide range of stakeholders. Health is unfortunately not my background. So I would not be best placed to answer a question like this. However, I will say that UNICEF follows the guidance of WHO. So whatever WHO declares about these kinds of requirements, whether it's vaccination for adults or for children or social distancing measures or whatever it may be, they are the authority within the UN system to speak about these issues, Mahra.
Okay, I hope that answered your question, Mahra. And moving on, Samahar, you had your hand. Samahar? You typed in your question, so I'm going to assume that you want me to read it out loud. She says, what are the documents required for doing the internship in UNICEF? Interesting.
So it depends. Once I share the link for the internship, you will be able to see there some of the general requirements. It's not very complicated, but every country office So the UNICEF office that exists in the different countries, we call them country offices. Each one has its own requirements. So it could vary significantly from country to country. For example, if you want to do an internship in a country, let's say like Nigeria, it will be completely different than doing an internship in New York, UNICEF headquarters in New York, or even here in Dubai or Abu Dhabi. So the general guidelines are provided in the website, but then the applications, the call for applications that will be issued by the country office that is looking for interns will have more specific guidelines regarding what they are looking for. So they could be looking, for example, for someone to support them in the area of partnerships or to do a study on early childhood development, etc.
Okay, moving on to the next question. Hur Zaroni, she's asking, how can I volunteer? Plus, can I get a work experience if I already did my internship?
So if I understand correctly, you did your internship with another entity, not United Nations. I don't think there's a limitation. Doctor, maybe you know this question better than me, but I don't think there's a limit on the number of internships you can do. So the fact that you've already done an internship, I don't think prevents you from doing another one. It's just a question of whether or not you meet the specific requirements of a particular internship that is being advertised by a UN agency.
Okay, thank you for answering that. Moving on, Abdullah Abdurrahman.
If I just may say, I mean, the major, to get the major, you need to do the internship with any entity that that's approved. So it's only one is required, but to do work experience and to do volunteer work, it's up to you whenever and wherever you want to do it. I mean, even during your study, you can do volunteer works, and we are welcoming that. In fact, we will be running a session maybe next after the midterm on encouraging students to do volunteer work, because we know volunteer work is rewarding for the person that does the volunteer work, and it's a contribution to the organization, and at the same time it is probably the one of the good gates or pathways to get into employment. Thank you.
Okay. I think I was at Abdullah's question. Can you describe a bit more about your numerous experiences helping people around the world? Yes, please do. I'm eager to hear that.
Yeah. So my first job was in the UNICEF Middle East and North Africa office. I started in communication, and I started at a very junior level. I was 23, almost fresh out of college. Before UNICEF, I had only worked in 2 places, 3 actually. No, yes, 3. So I didn't really have a lot of experience with UN organizations per se, but I did have an experience in communication. I used to be a radio producer and announcer. I used to translate the news from Turkish into Arabic and then read that twice a day while I was a student. So to Dr. Sherko's point, definitely it's something that adds a lot of value, because I was not treated as a fresh graduate, but rather someone who, has graduated, but also has a little bit of work experience. So there, my job, and you can imagine the situation in Iraq, the war had just broke out, unfortunately, when I joined UNICEF. So the situation was extremely bad, and there were a lot of requests for interviews because everybody wanted to talk to UN agencies, particularly UNICEF, about the situation of children. So pretty much my first kind of task was to organize interviews for the senior colleagues from the UNICEF team, with Lise Doucet, with the Christian Amanpour, these really big names in the media, in BBC, CNN, etc. So that was my job, and it was 3 a.m., 2 p.m. It doesn't matter to them. They need to get in touch with somebody who works for UNICEF, and I was the kind of in-between guy, if you will. So that was my first experience. And then after 7 years in Iraq, I moved on to Angola for 2 years. So that was a challenge of a very different kind, because Angola, the country itself, is not very safe. I had malaria the first month that I was there, and I almost didn't make it. It was a very difficult case of malaria, unfortunately. Yeah, these things happen when you work in the humanitarian sector, especially if you go to some of the tougher duty stations. You know, countries like Angola, for example, is a really good one, because insecurity, there's a lot of violence, but also the malaria, unfortunately, is still a very big contributor to not only child deaths, but also adult deaths. I'll stop there maybe, and maybe we can mention more war stories a little bit later.
I would like to say thank God you made it and you're here today.
Thank you.
It's an honor to have you again. Sheikha wants to ask, what was the hardest job you went through at UNICEF? Did I? Okay.
Yeah, hardest job. It wasn't Angola, surprisingly. I think when I first joined the Gulf Area Office, and the reason for that, you might be surprised, because compared to Angola, you know, it's a very, very different context, completely safe and all of that. However, it was challenging for me because I was the first person ever to be hired to this position. My position did not exist before. So my job was, as the partnerships person, to establish the connections and form those partnerships between UNICEF and the different entities. So that took me a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of patience, because they knew UNICEF, but they didn't really engage with UNICEF, particularly the public partners, in the way that we are engaging with them now. We had a different kind of relationship. So it was really a bit of a challenge, and an interesting one at that, because I learned so much along the way to transform the partnership into what it is today.
It was a bit surprising, but allow me to say it was very inspiring as well to have the first job in UNICEF. It's something worth mentioning, honestly. Sheikha wants to ask, is there a deadline for the UNICEF internship?
There is no deadline per se, because at the moment, for example, in the Gulf Area Office in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, we don't have any internships advertised, but that could change very quickly. So we could, you could keep track of the vacancies that are being advertised, or we could maybe, Dr. Sherko, come up with some kind of arrangement where UNICEF would inform the university, as well as other universities as well, because we have to be fair and open it up to everyone. So we can figure that out. I'm sure there is a central entity that we can reach out to who would be able to share these kinds of vacancy announcements with all students who are interested. But I would encourage you also to not only look at internships within the UAE, but also other countries, maybe in the region as well.
Okay, thank you. Fatma Saif Abed would like to ask.
You lost voice for all of you. I don't know, for Lina and for Hajar, I don't hear anything.
Oops. We can hear each other, Doctor.
Yeah, we can hear each other.
Yeah, okay. Now it's good. Now it's good. Yeah.
Good. Okay, moving on to Fatma's question. This is an interesting one. She says, with regard to children who migrate illegally, for example, by sea, what actions do you take to protect and secure the life of this child? And can you please mention some cases as examples?
So I haven't actually worked in any country offices that have dealt with this issue, with the issue of refugees. And we don't do it in isolation. UNICEF works with other UN organizations, like the UNHCR are the primary responsible agency for dealing with refugees. But of course, UNICEF is there to support. I've seen a lot of cases, especially those that become, publicized in the media. The one that really hits hard for me, and because my child was the same age, was Aylan Kurdi. I don't know if any of you remember. He was a little Kurdish boy who drowned and washed up on the shores in Turkey. And my son was this exact same age. So every time I would look at him, I would, you can imagine the impact it has on any mother, any person. You don't even have to be a mother to empathize with that. So this is, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we have as UN agencies. It's increasingly becoming a bigger issue for a lot of the countries that are receiving these refugees, but also the countries that are, these refugees are coming from. I mean, they're not leaving because of economics or anything like that. They're leaving because they really don't have any other choice. There is no reason for a person to become a refugee. There simply is no circumstance where you can say, yeah, this is why they became a refugee. It's simply because they didn't have any other choice. So I know it doesn't answer really the question, but just to say that UNICEF works with a wide range of partners and primarily, like I said, UNHCR, to make sure that children who are in this situation, as soon as they arrive, we make sure that they are in good health. We make sure that their nutrition is good. We make sure that their psychosocial needs are met. We set up something called child-friendly spaces, which is basically a tent with some toys and educational materials where children, as soon as they arrive, are taken there, and then UNICEF staff, but also UNICEF volunteers, work with these children to make them feel like, not that life is normal, because I think that is very difficult to give them when they've gone through such a trauma, but to give them a little bit of sense of normalcy.
Thank you for your answer. The case still makes goosebumps rise on my skin to this day.
Yeah.
Sheikh Az-Zahabi is asking, one of the goals was helping children affected in climate change. Can you give us some examples of the efforts taken?
So UNICEF's work in climate change is at many different levels. We have work at the global level. So we work with governments to make sure that their policies are climate resilient, right? We need to make sure that children, who are often the ones who are most affected, children and young people who are most affected by climate change issues, are accounted for and are protected through the laws and the policy of the country. So we do that at that level. And then, of course, at the more kind of grassroots field level, you have issues like the impact of drought on populations. Let's say, for example, in Ethiopia, there's famine. In 2022, we're still dealing with famine because of climate change, because the crops are lost and then they basically lose their livelihood, and there's no option for them, really. There's nowhere to go. There's no other, they don't have money to buy food from the market. So these are the kinds of issues that UNICEF faces and the kinds of things that we work on. So we work at the policy level, but also at the humanitarian response level, where we see the impact of climate change in real time. And unfortunately, it's getting worse year on year.
Okay, it seems like we're getting more burning questions. Everyone is excited to ask and have their answers.
I'm happy.
We're glad. Sheikha is asking, what are the skills that a person must possess in order to join UNICEF?
Good question. It depends on what area you want to work in. There's a lot of different sectors that we address. So we have health, we have nutrition, water and sanitation, hygiene. We have disability experts, for example, that are part of UNICEF. We have social policy experts. You have partnerships, people like me who can be generalists. You don't have to have a specific degree or background. You just need to have the right kind of work experience. So it really varies. But in general, speaking English, of course, you have to speak fluently. Me personally, I learned my English by watching TV with a dictionary. So it is what it is, but I'm proud that I was able to do that. But English, yeah, very important. Second language is also a huge advantage. So all of you are actually at a huge advantage because you already speak excellent English and you also speak fluent Arabic. So because Arabic is one of the UN languages, and those are the ones that we usually prioritize. For example, I speak 6 languages, but not all of them are UN languages. So if I wanted to advance more in my career and maybe work in regions where I haven't worked before, then I could look into, for instance, learning Spanish or Russian or any of the other UN languages that we have.
Lina, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you're coming from and the language that you speak.
Yeah, so I am half Jordanian, half Turkish by nationality, but originally I come from a place called Kabardino-Balkaria, and I'll write that there because I don't think anyone would have heard. If I dare you, if anybody has heard of Kabardino-Balkaria.
I guess you'll win at this. I never.
Geography buffs will know, but other than that, I don't think it's very commonly known. So Kabardino-Balkaria is an independent republic that is part of Russia. And we are an ethnic, yes, exactly. Ala knows his stuff. So we are an ethnic minority now, unfortunately, after there was a lot of problems, there was a genocide, and we got scattered to different parts of the globe. So my mom is diaspora in Turkey, and my dad is diaspora in Jordan. So I haven't experienced the challenges of being a refugee myself, but not even my father or my grandfather, but you know, my ancestors certainly have. So I come from that kind of mixed background. And one of the languages I speak is Circassian, which is my native language, which not many people, unfortunately, around the world speak anymore. And I also, so I learned English, Arabic, of course, I speak, being half Jordanian, Turkish, of course, I speak. And then Italian, I really loved Italian culture and all things Italian, so I went and learned Italian. And then to go to Angola, UNICEF actually supported me to learn Portuguese. So I went to Portugal for 1 month, and I learned the language, and then I landed there, and in 2 years I was able to practice and kind of enhance my my knowledge. So I also am married, I have 2 sons, and we're all vegan. Don't ask me anything about that though, because this conversation could take much longer.
Okay, we won't. Mariam Al-Ali is asking, where does UNICEF get its funding from?
You guys. You guys, governments, everybody, every single person can be a donor to UNICEF. So most of our contributions, the biggest ones, come from the governments. The US government is our #1 donor, but we also get a lot of funding from individuals like yourselves, and of course from high net worth individuals. Really rich people also are extremely generous with UNICEF. They give a lot of funding to us. Corporates, foundations, there's a variety of donors that give money, but the money that we most cherish and value is the money that comes from just regular people like you guys.
There's an interesting question, and allow me to double it up for you, since I have a burning question as well. An anonymous person is asking, I think her name is Shaima, I'm not sure, but it says it's anonymous. How far is the transparency? And if a donor wants to track his contribution, can he? If yes, how? And if I want to double it up, do you want me to double it up now or we wait?
Do it.
Okay, we wait?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so do you know the case that happened with a very famous influencer? His name is Abu Falla, which
yes.
He raised $7 billion, I guess.
I think it was $11 million.
Okay, $11 million. Thank you for correcting me. And the issue, the backfires that happened were that UNICEF, or it wasn't, I don't know which organization it was, they came out with a statement that said that half of the donations that people made for 1,100 something families that are refugees to have a warm winter would go to the employees. And this created a very backlash. How would you justify this? Or how can this be justified?
Okay, so the Abu Falla case is UNHCR. And I really would not feel comfortable talking about the work of another UN agency. So I will not respond to that part, but I can tell you, not only in UNICEF, but in all the UN agencies, we have been at this, I mean, UNICEF has been doing this for more than 75 years, right? So we have a lot of experience. The world has changed also, so we've had to adapt. We've had to become much more careful about how we do our accounting, how we show our figures to the donors, and how we demonstrate impact. Because of course, whether you donated $5 or you donated $5 billion, you want to know where that money went, how it was spent, all of those things. So we have come a very long way in terms of ensuring transparency and putting in place very stringent guidelines to make sure that the money is utilized in the most efficient, transparent, and impactful way possible. So it just, when a donor starts to give money to UNICEF, it's a journey that we go on together, right? So they can ask us any question they want, and we will provide the information to them. And it's usually when it's a new partner that UNICEF has not worked with before, it's a little bit of back and forth, you know, until they completely are convinced and satisfied that UNICEF will be able to fulfill all the demands of the partner. And this is across the board. We don't do tailor-made information for partners. All of our partners, depending on the level of giving, receive the same level of transparency, the same level of detail.
So if I would want to track my donation, is that possible?
It depends on your donation. If Hajar wants to give me $1 million, absolutely, you will get a detailed report on where that money was spent, how many children benefited, etc. But if Hajar gives me $10, it's very difficult because we deal with billions of dollars as an organization, not just UNICEF, all of the UN agencies. So you can imagine that it's extremely difficult to track. And also, not only that, we encourage donors to give us flexible funding. We encourage donors to trust UNICEF as the organization for supporting children's rights and ensuring that they have the best chance at life. So when the donors trust us, we hope that they can give us unrestricted funding, which means they leave it up to us entirely where we see the need, and then we allocate the funds to that country or that specific program. And that is the level of trust that we have with some of our biggest donors, actually, who give us billions of and millions of dollars every year.
So it depends. There's a minimum amount of dollars that can be tracked.
$1 counts and $1 million counts, but the level of reporting that UNICEF country offices can provide, because for example, Ethiopia, we were 420 staff, but we were dealing with budgets of $300 to $500 million. So we were implementing, I don't know how many projects at the time. It's more than 100 projects that are being done in different areas. Ethiopia is a huge country. So you have to take those things into consideration. It's if UNICEF was to report on every single dollar in that kind of way, we would need triple, if not 10 times more the staff that we currently have. And we still wouldn't be able to make it happen. So it's a bit of trust. You know, we have to have that level of trust that, you know, UNICEF will spend the money in the best way possible.
Mm-hmm. That's understandable. So I hope one day Hajar gets the $1 million and donates it.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
I'll follow up with you in a few years, Hajar.
Okay, I'm eager for that. Another anonymous is asking, how did you personally start working at the UN? And that's interesting. How did you start? What were the difficulties that you faced?
So, yes. So when I first started, remember I told you it was my childhood dream since I was around 11. And then you kind of forget about your childhood dream, right? Not many of us actually are able to live their childhood dreams. I think before that, I wanted to be an astronaut. So I'm sure my parents were relieved when I let go of that idea. So I kind of had that dream for a lot of years, and then I forgot about it. I studied public administration, which is really not the path, typical path for joining the UN. And then I carried on with my life. I worked in the radio. I worked in an environmental consulting firm. I worked in the Jordanian embassy in Ankara for a while and realized that that was not really, where my passion lies. And while I was working in Jordan, the war in Iraq broke out, unfortunately, and then they needed many more staff. So they had to hire a lot of people all of a sudden. So I applied. I was like, I'm never going to get in, but let me just try. I have nothing to lose. And I went for the interview and I got the job. As simple as that. Sometimes you just have to try. Don't shoot yourself in the foot and say, they're not going to take me. Try, do your best, do your research as well. Know and understand as much as you can about the organization. Be very clear in what you can give the organization, what you can bring to the table, and then just go for it.
So moral of the story, do not hesitate. Give it a try.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Noted. Moza bin Khamas is asking, is there any piece of advice you can give to someone who wants to volunteer?
Volunteering, I did, but not with UNICEF. And the advice with volunteering would be exactly the same as if you're looking to work with the UN one day. You have to just keep trying. Knock on as many doors as you can. I know in the UAE, because the spirit of giving and volunteering is so strong, it might be very difficult. The competition is very high for volunteering opportunities. Everybody wants to volunteer. So I think maybe in the UAE, you guys have a tough job, to be honest, in finding volunteering opportunities. Other countries are not as fortunate, but you just have to keep trying, see where your interests are and follow that. For example, my volunteering opportunity my first one was in a summer camp, because I really like children. I love working with children. So that was my first one. And the second one was the International Children's Festival when I was a student in Turkey. I volunteered and I took care of the groups that came from Egypt, from Syria, from Jordan. I was doing translation, taking care of the kids, making sure they get from A to B, etc. And when you volunteer, I think you have to, volunteers usually don't do the most glamorous job. So you have to be a little bit humble, and you have to keep in mind that you're there to learn. And for that, you need to choose an organization that you feel passionate about, so that you can get that rewarding feeling when you work with them as a volunteer.
Since it's tough, we have to knock as hard as you can on every door. Let's take it.
Absolutely.
Al-Anud Al-Ali is asking, what are the goals of the organization in the next 10 years?
So 10 years, we haven't gotten there yet. The reason for that is that the world is evolving. Things are changing. 2 years ago, there was no pandemic, and look at us now. UNICEF's biggest focus at the moment is on fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. That was not even on our radar when it happened. So because of that, we tend to plan in chunks of 5 years. So the strategic plan that I talked about, and I will share the presentation with all of you. I'll also give you, I forgot to include that, but I'll give you links to UNICEF, UNICEF in the Gulf, etc. So if any of you are interested, you can go there and check. But basically, the priorities for UNICEF more or less don't change, right? We need to make sure that every child, whoever they are, wherever they are, their rights are fulfilled, they have the best opportunity to succeed in life, they have the right kind of nutrition, health support, they go to school, their mental health is taken care of. All of those aspects is the UNICEF core mandate. And then depending on the circumstances that change, we change sometimes a little bit our programmatic focus, but the underlying kind of motivation for our existence is always the same.
Hopefully we don't face any more pandemics. Inshallah, no more.
Inshallah, but Dr. Tedros seems to think otherwise, so.
Oh my God, I hope not. I hope
Yeah.
not. Majid Sultan is asking, as mental health awareness in this region is not as prevalent as in the West, what has UNICEF done for mental health for children in this region?
Excellent question. So if we talk about the sub-region, the Gulf region, it's a completely different types of mental health issues that we usually deal with. If we broaden that a little bit to the Middle East and North Africa region, of course, we're talking about countries that are in conflict, Syria, Yemen, Iraq, etc. It becomes much more complicated then, right? You're talking about trauma because of war or like school disruption for 2 years, because of COVID, etc., those types of issues. But even here, for example, in the UAE, there are a lot of mental health issues related to, for instance, cyberbullying, because devices are available to a lot of children, and it's super easy. It takes 60 seconds to make or break someone's day. And children and young people, unfortunately, are highly susceptible to this kind of toxic behavior, which is cyberbullying. And these are the types of issues that UNICEF works on. So it's not only about raising awareness within the young people, but also, raising awareness with institutions like universities, like schools, to make sure that they have systems in place to address these kinds of concerns around mental health.
Okay, moving on to the next question. Shemma is asking, what major do I need to have, I guess, to work for UNICEF? And is it easy to get a job in UNICEF?
Good question. It completely varies. It depends on which area you want to work in. You can be an engineer. I've worked with many doctors. I've worked with teachers. I've worked with social workers, accountants, people who were in Wall Street and then decided that it was not for them and joined UNICEF instead. Someone their first job was selling VHS videos. I don't know if you guys even know what that is. You're probably too young, but yeah, those kinds of things. I mean, it really varies. It's, in a sense, it's a difficult question to answer because the door is wide open. You can pretty much be from any background, but if you're looking for specializations that would give you a little bit of an edge, then I would say if you're not looking at the technical fields of education, health, nutrition, water and sanitation, etc., for which you need to have a medical background, engineering background, etc., then I would go for the general, like international relations, for example, is a really good one. Public administration now has become a more interesting one. It can even be like an MBA, could be a really good segue for a career with the UN as well. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, really. And is it difficult to get into UNICEF? I would say it's not super easy, but only because I say this with a lot of humility. We are a very well-known organization that is trusted. We are the go-to agency when it comes to issues of children and young people. So, of course, whenever there's a vacancy announcement, there's a lot of interest. Some vacancies can receive up to 2,000 applicants. So you can imagine it's a very competitive environment. But I don't think that's the case only for UNICEF or the UN. I think the whole world has become more competitive, as also the skills of new graduates have become, I mean, I can't compare you guys to how I was as a fresh graduate. I mean, I'm sure you would completely overtake me in any field, because things change, things evolve, education systems evolve. And I know Dr. Sherko and the rest of the team at the University of Sharjah really do everything they can to make sure that you guys are equipped to the best degree possible to face the world once you graduate. So I hope I was able to answer your question a little bit.
Agreed, truly. Dr. Sherko and all of the instructors and staff here, they do their best. They truly do. The next question, we have Sarah Zahabi. What is the motto of UNICEF?
The motto? For every child. UNICEF for every child, simply.
Okay.
Every child, wherever they are, whoever they are.
Okay, there's a long question. Are you ready for this?
Yalla.
Living in a capitalist society, child labor exploitation is expected, seeing as it's a direct result of global capitalism and the efforts of major corporations to make higher profits. Knowing this, what is UNICEF's response to those major corporations that profit off of the backs of the children in third world countries? And what are the efforts that are being made to protect children from the, what's the word? I can't see it. The question disappeared. So I think she
Let me see. I think I can see. Inevitable greed of these corporations. Good question, Mariam.
Okay, thanks for helping me out.
Sure. So yes, it's a difficult one because one of the biggest areas of focus for UNICEF is child labor. Unfortunately, in today's world, we're still facing this, and it's not only the big corporates, unfortunately, that are doing this, Mariam. We have countries like India and Pakistan where there are children actually born into slavery, if you can imagine that. The entire family is under slavery. So the child is actually born as a slave and continues their life as a slave. So this is something that is a systemic issue that we have in many countries and many different contexts. Capitalism, for sure, has had a role to play in this, but they are not the only ones to blame, because also governments have a big role in making sure that these kinds of grave violations against children are prevented. And make no mistake, child labor is, by all definitions, a grave violation against child rights, because when you force a child to work, you're depriving them of their education, you're putting their health at risk, you're jeopardizing all of their opportunities for having a bright and healthy future. So it's a difficult question to answer in a short segment like this, but I'm happy to take it offline with you later on, because it's a really interesting topic. Thank you for asking.
Okay, one more question, last one, because we have to wrap it up. We took too much of your time. We apologize.
No, please. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah. I love it.
What is the ground reality of going in hotspot? For example, like how to prepare and face the ever-present danger. Okay.
So I've been lucky in that the biggest danger that I have faced in my 19 years as a humanitarian has been mosquitoes, who gave me malaria. It's funny, sometimes something you take for granted could actually be the thing that kills you. But I've had many colleagues who have not been as fortunate. Everyone who's been with the United Nations, regardless of which organization, and has worked in the field. So it's a little bit different. In the UAE, we don't really call it field because, you know, it's more like a mini headquarters rather than field. But if you're working in a place like DRC or some areas in Nigeria, Angola, again, because for me, that was one of the hardest ones. It's extremely common to hear stories of people being stabbed, shot, kidnapped. Kidnapping is a really bad one because sometimes they are kidnapped and they are taken hostage for months and their families have no idea where they are. So it's not only an ordeal for the person, for the staff member themselves, but also their families as well. Unfortunately, these things happen more than we would like. We do, as UN agencies, try our best to protect our staff, but there's only so much we can do. And because our motto is every child, wherever the children are, we need to be there. So even if we're putting ourselves in harm's way, it's a sacrifice that we are all, as humanitarians, willing to make, because that is the only way that we can help those children.
I was not so generous at the beginning of the seminar with the timing. So can we take one last question?
Please.
Because I like this so much, I could not ignore this. How do you suppress overwhelming sadness or emotions when you witness emotional events and prevent yourself from reflecting it, as it can be uncomfortable? Any tips?
Sometimes you can, sometimes you just have to keep telling yourself, you know, you need to maintain professionality and you need to not show them that you're sad, because it doesn't matter how sad you are. It cannot compare to how, for example, a mother who just lost her baby due to malnutrition feels, or whatever the case might be. So you can try to be professional and you can try to suppress those feelings of sadness, but sometimes it's so overwhelming that it's completely okay for you to break down and cry, because that is the job. And we are, after all human, and there's only so much bad that we can tolerate. So It has happened to every humanitarian at some point. It could be that a little baby who is malnourished wrapped their little hand around your finger that got you, or a story that you heard from a mother that escaped from conflict in South Sudan. Whatever it is, for each one of us, there's a breaking point. Even the security officers who are like 2 meters tall and pretend to be really tough guys, make no mistake, they've all cried at some point. Doing this job is just, you're just part of the deal. There's nothing you can do about it. So you just have to let your feelings go.
Thank you. I'm sad to say we have to wrap up. We took too much of your time. Thank you so much. It was an honor to have you. By that, I can say that we are in a time where we need to stand with each other, for each other, and acknowledge the rising issues that you pointed out that we face in a globalized world. I don't think that there's a better feeling than being able to give back to this world, because we are so used to taking and taking that we tend to forget to give back. So again, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you. It was an honor to have you. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Hajar. Thank you so much. This was, in all honesty, one of the highlights of my career, being here with you guys. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about my work. That is such a huge part of who I am. And Dr. Sherko, thank you also to you and the rest of the team for the opportunity. And Hajar, I know you're going to be an exceptional moderator later on in your life because you're already there. And all of you who stayed up and listened, thank you so much for your interest, for your amazing questions. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Lina. Thank you. We really appreciate your time. We really enjoyed it. And I think the students were very, very engaged and and the reason they were engaged because they enjoyed it very much. So we really appreciate your time. One more time, we thank IR Society and specifically tonight, Hajar. Thank you, Hajar. Thank you, Hala. Thank you, the planning committee. We have a planning committee that organizes this kind of things. So much appreciated. I thank every single student who participated in this discussion and who were, or maybe just listeners. Thank you again.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Okay, then we can say bye-bye.
Take care.